Protect yourself and your family from unexpected challenges. Consider accident-only income protection. Click the link in the description to find out more.
You want anything bad enough? Don't make excuses. You gotta lose your time and your sleep for it. You find a way.
Where should we start, Dom? I think we'll start with Daniel Dubois, Gerald Miller. We obviously did some predictions before I went out to Riyadh, and I think you struggled to pick. You was like saying it's a really close fight, and I think you said Miller just by late KO. Looking at the fight, Dubois started strong, and there were some really hard rounds for him in the middle, and a lot of people thought he might get folded, but he kind of ticked all the boxes and things people kind of questioned about him.
I mean, fair play to Daniel Dubois. I think the thing on my mind was that because of his recent losses and the way he's got beat by Usyk and Joe Joyce, that it got to that point where it came on top a bit heavy and he kind of folded. And I think he's young enough to bounce back from that, but whether it psychologically done him in, you know, that fight against Miller, it obviously showed that he's still prepared to get back in the ring and have a go. I think looking back, when I'm glad Dubois won, and you know he has turned himself around. But I think just looking over Miller's record, when you look, I think his fight before Dubois was a 6-round win over Lucas Brown, who was shot to bits years ago. I think really I should have probably looked at that one a bit closer, because you know if anybody's going to beat Dubois, they're going to be beating Brown in quicker than 6 rounds. So, you know, fair play to Dubois. He pulled it out of the bag. He's back on track. He's back in the mix. You know, there's some big fights out there, you know, over in Saudi now. They've got good money for that fight. Some massive incentive for him. So fair play. You know, will Joyce come back? Who knows? But, you know, sometimes...
You mean Miller?
Sorry?
You mean Miller?
No, I'm on about Joyce.
Oh, Joyce.
Yeah, because you know Joyce. When you think, you know, at that point with Joyce and Dubois, it was like the clash of the titans. The prospects coming through, and Dubois carried on doing it. And you know, Joyce has been beat twice. He's been beat by the what do they call him, Chang, is it? Zhang. Yeah. So you know, will he ever come back now at the age he's at, 37, 38? So you know, fair play to Dubois. He's pulled himself back round.
What do you think of the work that Don Charles has done? He seemed like a real big motivator on Daniel, and I think, I don't know Daniel personally, but it seems like he thrives off somebody just being in his ear, constantly reminding him that, you know, what he's capable of doing.
Well, you think of the trainer that Joyce had before, the Cuban guy, was it?
No, I'm about Dubois.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're on about Dubois. The trainer Dubois had before was Shane McGuigan, and before that,
Peacock.
Yeah, was Martin Bowers. I think, you know what? I think that I personally think Shane McGuigan did a really good job on Dubois, and I didn't particularly think it was a good move him going to Don Charles. But Don Charles is a decent trainer. Obviously, he spent a lot of years with Chisora. I've got a lot of respect for Don. He's got a lot of experience. And anybody who can deal with somebody like Chisora, who's a real handful, I think more than anything is that Don will have used that experience of time with Dubois and done a bit of an edge job on him, which is, I don't think Shane's capable of, because he's too young. Whereas Don's got a lot of experience of being in the big fights, dealing with awkward customers, being a bit more chilled and laid back, and you know, probably allowing Daniel to do more of his own stuff and be confident in doing what he's doing. So you know, fair play to Don. He's got Dubois back in the mix, and you know, not taking anything away from him or Shane, that, you know, with fighters, it's always going to be 80 to 90% of what they're bringing into the gym when they're training. You know, trainers play a big part in boxers' lives, but there's certain things you just can't override what they're doing. So, you know, they're doing the fighting, you're there to guide them, to keep them on track, and then it's down to how much they want to listen or they trust in your process. So that's probably where, you know, he's got, got hold of Daniel's ear and you know, told him to relax a little bit more, trust himself even more, be patient more than anything. So I think, you know, Don's done a good job.
Definitely so. Next fight I'm talking about is Joseph Parker Wilder, and I think you said Wilder will catch him at some point and stop him. That never happened. I think most people in the industry, I don't think I met anyone, maybe the odd few people on Twitter are saying Parker would win because of Wilder's inactivity, but most people said Parker would be ahead on points and at some point he will get caught and get took out.
You know what? Watching that fight, I had a bit of inside information, and Joseph Parker was overtraining with Tyson, and I actually judged that fight on the best version of Parker turning up and the best version of Wilder turning up. And within 2 or 3 rounds of that fight, watching it, I just thought, Wilder's got no interest in this fight at all. Never committed to anything. His legs look shot to bits. His power came from his legs and his ability to move in that fast. And what I was really surprised is that right hand what he had, what was knocking everybody out, he started throwing what I call the handbag shot. And he was in close and he was hitting Parker with a inside slap, like some old lady hitting you with her handbag. We call it the handbag shot. I was absolutely astounded to what he's diminished to. And I think purely, my immediate reaction was he's not even trained for this fight. He's got no ambition to win it, but they've chucked a load of money at him, enough for him to get in there, and all he did realistically was play it safe for 12 rounds. I'll be very surprised if he ever boxes again. And at the end, when he thought he'd won it, he you know, what was that all about? So the killer Deontay Wilder we're used to seeing never ever turned up that night. And not taking anything away from Parker, it wasn't like Parker boxed out of his skin. He boxed well enough within himself. He had a good round, I think it was 8th or 9th or whatever it is, when he battered Wilder on the ropes, and Wilder managed to get through it. But you know, it's a flattering result for Parker, really, because the Deontay Wilder that we know just did not turn up, and that's probably down to inactivity, loss of ambition, and probably thinking, well, I'll just get and do it for money. Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Lauren Lee Wood, the second fight, and everybody kept saying, well, Laura's going to get going in a minute. Round 1 went, round 2, round 3, Laura's going to get going in a minute. And after 3 rounds, you thought, he's never going to get going. He'd never even engaged half the time, Laura, in that fight. Just got through the rounds.
But could that be a case of maybe Joseph Parker and Lee Wood neutralising, like stopping them from?
No, because Lee Wood in the first fight was a hard fight. You could see the definite loss of ambition in Laura in that second fight. The difference between Laura, the Laura that beat Warrington, the Laura that beat Lee Wood the first time. He was not when he boxed Lee Wood in the second fight. That Laura did not exist, and it just reminded me, the commentators saying that, you know, Wilder's gonna drop this hand in. Every time he did throw that right hand, when he did throw it, it was never accurate. It was never on target. It never once caught Parker flush. So his timing was way off for a start, and it was such a gamble to try and leave it on that one shot.
What about the counter arguments? Obviously, in Joseph Parker's example, and I obviously spoke to Andy Lee, their tactics were whenever Wilder is ready to throw, he kind of cocks his hand a bit like Ricky Hatton, so you kind of either punch with him or you just take a half a step back, and they felt they did that every time he was getting ready.
I don't think it was anything to do, I'll be honest, and people might not like what I'm going to say, I don't think it was anything to do with the game plan. The version of Deontay Wilder, it's like somebody phoned him up and said, you can fight Joseph Parker in 4 months' time, you're getting 3 times more than you've ever got paid in your life, and Wilder's probably thought, I'm nowhere near fit, I'll just get myself fit. I mean, light as he's ever been, his legs were shocking, his movement, he looked like he was on wooden legs all the way through the fight. There was just no sign of Deontay Wilder there, and I don't think it was anything to do with the game plan or anything to do with how good Joseph Parker was. It was just how bad Deontay Wilder was, because if you look at that wasn't the man who gave Tyson Fury, 3 decent fights.
But what about the fact that everyone was picking Wilder to win? Like, if even you picked
yeah,
him.
because we're going on what Deontay Wilder should be bringing to the table, and he didn't bring to the table what Deontay Wilder brought to the table. He just didn't.
So the other debate's been is the work obviously Malik Scott's done with Wilder. Some people are saying he's trying to make him box when he's started.
Do you know what? In that corner, if I'd have been in that corner, you'd have been screaming and shouting at Deontay Wilder saying, "What are you doing? You're letting this fight slip away from you." From what I heard, and I didn't hear a lot of the corner, there was no sense of urgency whatsoever. Am I right? Did you hear any sense of urgency? At any point screaming at Deontay Wilder saying, "You're letting the round slip." So maybe the corner knew that he hadn't trained properly. Maybe they all knew they were just there for a payday. I looked at that fight and just thought, that's typical of somebody who's just turned up to get the money. That's what it looked like to me, and I've seen plenty of those fights in the past.
But obviously he had a potential Anthony Joshua fight date ahead, and would he really give that up just on the thought that he was just going to...
Yeah, but if look, he hasn't boxed for 2 years. He's made plenty of money. I don't know if he's managed to save it. Let's just say, you'll be able to find this out, that might have been his career highest payday, because we're in Saudi. There must be so much money going into that show, because in order for people like Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn to come together to work and put fights together, they must be getting paid so much money to do that. Otherwise, they won't bother doing it, because they do it on themselves. So it's worthwhile for everybody. So if it's worthwhile for Eddie and Frank to bury the hatchet and work together to get the money, it's the same. They must be chucking so much money at those fighters to make those fights work. Let's think, the only time I can remember in the past when that's been worthwhile doing is when Lennox Lewis spoke with Mike Tyson. They're both on different networks. And if the fight was neither going to happen or it was going to happen, and we might as well both share the pie. So there must have been enough money for everybody, and you don't really see that anymore, where there's like co-promotions between big TV networks.
But would Wilder really give up that AJ? Because that whatever he got paid, that surely the AJ fight's double that.
But you can't. But the thing is, what you can't do as a fighter, you can't look at.
Do you think complacency maybe?
But I'll tell you where the real incentive. If you're paying somebody a lot of money for a fight, you don't even need to look at that next fight. If you're getting £2 or £3 or £4 million for that fight, it doesn't really matter what's happening after that, does it? Because that's just hypothetical whether that fight happens. It's not guaranteed or nailed down. Anything could happen. Wilder could just say, I don't want to box no more. So he might have just been happy enough to cop for that, £2-4 million quid. I'm thinking that's me done. Because if that was the case, there would have been more in that fight.
You said, I think you tweeted as well. I saw one of your tweets. You said, Wilder's legs look like they're gone.
Shocking.
But I'm sure you told me a few weeks ago, a heavyweight's legs don't go. So, in what sort of?
Well, the last thing, but you've got to remember, the last thing what goes with the last thing. Heavyweight's legs don't tend to go. But look at Deontay Wilder's legs. He's got them he's obviously coming as his career lightest, I think, and his legs were like sticks. But you've only got to see his balance. If you know what you're looking at. In order to throw the shots that he's throwing, he's got to get into range. Now, he outreaches Parker by a good couple of inches, but yet he never managed to land the jab. Now, his legs were underneath him, and he was standing over his leg to throw the shot. Well, if you want to get your shot and get balance, you put your left leg forward, you slightly lean back, turn sideways, and throw your jab out. But he's more or less square on, Deontay Wilder. He's more or less stood square on. There's no angle to him to throw it out sideways. He's throwing from here straight. How can Parker, who's shorter and less reach, be catching him? Could
that be because of Parker's footwork?
Not really, no. Because Deontay Wilder should be able to stand at the back of the ring and hit him with a jab, but he couldn't. He was hesitant throwing the shot. He was hesitant for what was coming back, and generally when that happens, is because the fighter knows he hasn't done the preparation. Wilder was one of those kids who just going gung-ho and just throw caution to the wind and sling bombs in. There was no bomb squad. Where was the bomb squad? He wasn't throwing the overhand rights and the unorthodox shots. He took no risks in that fight whatsoever.
In short, would you say they got the tactics wrong, or was it is Wilder done, do you think, or is it accumulation?
I just don't think. I personally do not think. In my mind, I was thinking.
Or was Josie Parker too good on the day?
Josie Parker did the best that Josie Parker could do. I just don't think Deontay Wilder, I just don't think he trained for that fight. I think he did enough to get through 12 rounds and get his money and finish on his feet. because it just didn't remind me, you know, Wilder'd got no ambition, whether the stuffing had been knocked out of him. At 38 years old, he, I think, got that killer instinct. And when he made that speech at the end, what did he say? I'm happy in life, I found peace. And he went on with that bit of a speech. Well, that's contentment. And in boxing, when you get to that stage, do you understand, when you've got nothing to fight against or no reason to fight, and you come out with that comment and it's like you're not interested in beating people up anymore.
One slightly topic I want to quickly speak to you about. Your dad was obviously like a devout Christian. We've seen religion plays a big part in a lot of boxers' lives. Just wanted to get your opinion on. We've seen, like, in the last few weeks, we've seen Gervonta Davis, and we've seen the last couple of days he's announced that he's become Muslim. Devin Haney obviously announced it recently. Gerald Miller said it the other week. I think John O'Carroll's been saying he's looking to become Muslim. And we see a lot of people turn to God. From your experience, from seeing your dad in the boxing industry and the fighters, you know, how important do you think faith plays a part in boxers' lives and careers?
You know, my own personal opinion is faith is a personal thing. You don't need to broadcast it. It's how you live your life. I've seen plenty of people, you know, born again Christians, you know, turn to Islam, doing certain things, and their lives don't change. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about people who were not born into Islam, people who've converted. Same with my dad used to call them Sunday Catholics or Friday Muslims or whatever. And I always remember, I think I might have even said this before, when my dad used to do fasting. And he said, Brendan, you don't drink, you do the fasting, you don't do this. He goes, you could be a Muslim. My dad went, you could be. I think, what do you mean? And that's the difference. There are people who are in Islam who pray 5 times a day and they observe all the rules, and they don't go broadcasting it. You don't need to. Religion's a personal thing. You don't need to tell everybody, oh, look at me, look how great I am, or whatever. You just do your thing. You don't need to broadcast those things there. So for me, my dad, you know, we had every race, religion in this gym. Islam, Christianity, forms of each one, Sunni Muslims, Catholics, Protestants, who were fighting in Ireland over certain stuff. Every, you know, Buddhism, Sikhs, we've had every, and in here, nobody's, you know, nobody cares. They're here for boxing, and respect everybody's religion, what it is. You know, respect them as human beings. Don't get into it. I used to say, it's personal and private what you do. My dad was a Catholic, but he never stood up here and turned around and sort of preaching to people. He just said, you've got to live by the 10 Commandments, all the rules of life. That's how you have to get on. And keep the rest to yourself. We're not here to preach, and he probably could have done, but he didn't. And now we were Church of England, we were Protestants. My mother was a Protestant, my dad was a Catholic. You know, you're not supposed to do that. Catholics, Irish Catholics aren't supposed to marry Protestants. So it wasn't particularly, it was frowned upon at the time. But my dad said, I've seen enough of religion and what it was to make my own informed choices what I did. It's how you live your life. So, you know, each to their own.
Have you ever been stranded on the side of a motorway with a broken down car? Like me, is that something that worries you? That's where motor breakdown insurance comes in. If your vehicle breaks down, a trained professional will be sent out to get you back on the road. Or if this is not possible within the specified time frame, to transport you to your home or to the nearest garage.
You want anything bad enough? Don't make excuses. You gotta lose your time and your sleep for it. You find a way.